Hey, what is up guys, it is me Flavio here, back with another Mafia City video. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining a few battle mechanics of the game which will probably help you guys find better troop formations for different situations. Troop formation is a very complicated topic to talk about. There can never be one best formation because what works against one formation might not fare as well against another formation. So I'm pretty sure that even though this video covers a lot of advanced stuff, there are probably going to be a lot of other great formations out there which I just haven't tested yet. So I'd like you guys to comment down below which formation you use in battle and why. I also want you guys to share this video with as many people as possible so that we can get a lot of different formations to experiment with. Having said that, let's begin the video. The first topic that we'll be talking about is the 8 different troop types. As you all probably know, there are 4 main troop types: bulkers, bikers, shooters, and vehicles, and each of these troop types have 2 subtypes within them. The bulkers are classified into tankers and combaters. Tiers 10, 7, 6, 4, 2, and 1 bulkers are all tankers or defensive bulkers, and tiers 9, 8, 5, and 3 bulkers are all combaters or offensive bulkers. The bikers are classified into riders and assaulters. Tiers 10, 8, 6, 3, 2, and 1 bikers are all riders, and tiers 9, 7, 5, and 4 are all assaulters. Vehicles are classified into assault vehicles and carriers. Tiers 10, 8, 7, 5, 3, and 1 vehicles are assault vehicles, and tiers 9, 6, 4, and 2 vehicles are carriers. And the shooters are classified into gunners and snipers. Tiers 10, 8, 6, 5, 2, and 1 shooters are all gunners, and tiers 9, 7, 4, and 3 shooters are snipers. Each of these types have different talents which make them good or bad for different situations. We'll get into the talents later in this video, but for now there are 2 more categories that you could classify these troops into based on their range. That is, the ranged troops and the melee troops. This classification will help you understand how the biker's charge talent works, which we'll be talking about later in the video. The next topic that we'll be talking about is troop lineup. Troop lineup basically means the order in which your troops are positioned in battle. Since there are 8 troop types, the lineup consists of 8 layers. The positioning is based on troop range. The troops in the front will usually be attacked first, and the troops positioned at the end will usually be attacked the last. The first layer is the layer of tankers. These are your defensive bulkers and the best defense troops in the game. They have high defense and high HP, enabling them to defend the troops with low defense and HP positioned behind them. This allows the high DPS troops in the back to survive for longer and thus do more damage. Tankers are meant for defense and not for offense, so you shouldn't judge their performance based on kills. Instead, you should try to predict the number of tankers that you lose based on your opponent's troop formation and stats, and just send enough of them to protect your march. Against stronger opponents, 30 to 50% of your march should be tankers, and against weaker opponents, 10 to 20% should work just fine. However, these numbers might vary depending upon your stats, your opponent's stats, and the troop formation of your opponent. The second layer is the layer of carriers. These are the defensive vehicles, and although they are not as good as bulkers, they still do a decent job at defending your march. You can use carriers instead of bulkers while attacking weaker turfs, since carriers get a defense bonus while attacking turfs. This is a great way to reduce your bulker losses during kill events so you can save your bulkers for tougher opponents. The third layer is the layer of combaters or offensive bulkers. These bulkers have a low defense and high attack. If your first 2 layers are strong enough, then their low defense shouldn't be a problem, as they won't be attacked until all the troops from your first 2 layers are killed. If you have a very high bulker attack, you should add a lot of these offensive bulkers to your march to get more kills. The fourth layer is the layer of riders. Once all the offensive bulkers are dead, your riders will start getting attacked. The riders have a special talent called charge, with which they can bypass the melee troops and directly attack the ranged troops in the last 4 layers. So those were the first 4 layers. All troops in the first 4 layers are melee troops. Now let's take a look at layers 5 to 8, which consist of ranged troops. The 5th layer is the layer of assaulters. These troops again have the charge talent, with which they can directly attack the opponent's ranged troops. The 6th layer is the layer of gunners. I'm not really a fan of these troops. Even though they have double attack speed, these troops do significantly less damage to tankers, and since they always attack tankers first, these troops never really get a lot of kills unless your opponent's march doesn't contain a lot of tankers. The 7th layer is the layer of snipers. These troops help kill a lot of your opponent's troops during defense. However, they're not very effective on offense. While reinforcing teammates, make sure you send a lot of these snipers to maximize kills. And the last layer is the layer of assault vehicles. These troops are good for turf attacks. In spite of their slow attack speed, they still do a significant amount of damage in battle due to their high attack. So those were all the 8 layers. Now within each layer, troops are arranged based on their tier. The lower tier troops are placed in front of the higher tier ones. So in case of defensive bulkers, the tier 7s would be placed before tier 10s, tier 6s before tier 7s, tier 4s before tier 6s, tier 2s before tier 4s, and tier 1s before tier 2s. And for the remaining 7 troop types, they'd also have a similar positioning. Whenever you set your march, you should always add at least one defensive bulker from each tier. Doing so will reduce your troop losses a little bit. So for example, if you're using tier 7 bulkers in your march, then you should add one each of tier 1, tier 2, tier 4, and tier 6 bulkers to your march for extra defense. During tournament attacks, you can customize your march in such a way that you have just enough bulkers to defend your march. This will enable you to do more damage by adding more offensive troops to your march. You can further reduce the number of bulkers you add to your march by adding one troop each from every tier of defensive vehicles. For offensive troops, you should mix in a few thousand lower tier troops as well to do a little more damage. As you increase the number of troops of a specific type and tier, their effectiveness goes down. Eventually, you'll reach a point where it doesn't make sense to send more high tier troops, but instead adding lower tier troops to your march will in fact increase the damage output. For example, instead of sending 30,000 tier 10 bikers, it might be better to send 20,000 tier 10 and 10,000 tier 8 bikers, or even 20,000 tier 10, 10,000 tier 8, and 2,000 tier 6 bikers for more damage. Now let's take a look at troop talents. Each of the 8 different troop types have their own set of skills. Tankers have bulletproof vest, which reduces damage received from shooters, physical ability, which increases defense, and physique, which increases their health. Bulletproof vest is the only reason why shooters are usually ineffective while attacking someone with a lot of tankers in their march. Since shooters cannot attack ranged troops directly, they always attack tankers first, and because of bulletproof vest, they do not get a lot of damage. So if you find someone with a lot of tankers in their march, you should avoid using a lot of shooters. Let's move on to combaters now. Combaters have bare hand combat, which increases their damage against bikers, fierce attack, which enhances bulker damage, which is why they have very high attack, and they also have heavy blow, which sometimes deals 3 times the damage. Now the bare hand combat skill makes them seem to be very effective against bikers. However, again, since these troops cannot directly attack ranged troops, they will always attack tankers first. So in order for them to be able to attack bikers, you'll have to break through the first 3 layers of troops, and the 4th and 5th layer comprise of bikers. This does not mean that these troops are ineffective in battle. In fact, they do get a lot of kills in battle because of their fierce attack and heavy blow talents. However, you shouldn't increase the number of combaters if you see a lot of bikers in the opponent's march, unless you're absolutely sure that you can destroy their first 3 layers of troops. Now let's talk about gunners. Gunners have continuous shooting, which doubles their attack speed, armory piercer, which lets them deal more damage to all troops other than bulkers, and head blast, which gives them a chance to deal additional damage. As I said before, these troops are ineffective against bulkers. However, in case your opponent doesn't have enough bulkers to defend their march, these troops could prove to be very effective. Snipers have intensified, because of which they have a very high attack. They have assassinate, which gives them a very long range, and they also have defense, which gives them an attack bonus while defending turfs. These troops are very effective on defense, and they usually tend to kill a lot of the opponent's troops while defending because of their defense talent. Let's take a look at vehicles now. Assault vehicles have heavy firepower, which is why they have a very high attack. However, this talent also halves their attack speed. There's weapons carrier, which is why they have the longest range, and they also have offensive enhance, which gives them an attack bonus while attacking turrets. In spite of their slow attack speed, these troops really do a lot of damage in battle and should always be used in your march, especially when attacking turfs. The armed carriers have armory, which is why they have very high defense and HP. They have crew capacity, which makes them efficient for gathering resources, and they also have offensive defense, which gives them a defense bonus while attacking turfs. As I said before, you could use these troops instead of tankers to attack weaker players during kill events. This will help you reduce your tanker losses. Also, once you unlock tier 9 troops, you could try using these troops to defend your march in the tournament instead of tier 7 bulkers, since they have slightly better stats than tier 7 bulkers. However, they do not have the separate damage reduction skill like the bulkers, which might make them ineffective. I haven't tried this out since I do not have a lot of tier 7 bulkers, so if you try it out, let me know in the comments below if it works or not. And finally, let's move on to bikers. Riders have a high speed because of the ambush talent. They also have a talent called dodge, which allows them to dodge damage. And they also have the charge talent, which gives them a chance to attack the enemy's ranged troops. Assaulters have ambush, which increases speed, resource warfare, which makes them effective for attacks on resource tiles, and charge. Whenever you're attacking resource tiles, make sure you add a decent amount of assaulters to your march to do a lot of damage. Now let's talk about the charge talent. Charge is a special talent that gives bikers a chance to bypass the 4 layers of melee troops and directly attack the ranged troops. Since most of the ranged troops have low defense, the bikers are usually able to get a lot of kills because of this talent. This talent helps a lot against opponents with many bulkers in their march, as it reduces the effectiveness of bulkers. Now, once all the enemy's ranged troops are killed, whenever the charge talent triggers, the bikers will randomly attack any of the 4 melee troop types. This means that the melee troops are only safe from charge damage as long as there are ranged troops to defend them. Once all the ranged troops are dead, even the melee troops will be vulnerable to charge damage. That's all about troop talents. Now before we talk about different troop formations, let's take a look at defense weapons. So defense weapons consist of 3 types, and each type counters different troops. Grenades counter tankers and combaters, caltrops counter assaulters and riders, and firebombs counter gunners and snipers. There are no defense weapons in the game that counter vehicles. Defense weapons do not follow any specific sequence for attack, however they always attack troops that they counter first. If the troops that they counter are not available in the march, then they will attack any other troop type. Each level of defense weapon can only have 1 troop type. So for example, if you have 1,000 level 5 grenades, all of those could either attack combaters or they could all attack tankers. But if you have 500 each of level 4 and level 5 grenades, the level 4s would have a choice between combaters and tankers, and the level 5s would again get to choose separately between combaters and tankers. Out of all the 3 types of defense weapons, firebombs usually get a lot of kills because gunners and snipers have very low defense and HP. Caltrops get fewer kills than firebombs because assaulters and riders have more defense and HP than gunners and snipers. Grenades get the least kills mainly because of the damage reduction stat of bulkers. Now let's take a look at a few common troop formations. In the underground tournament, especially the global one, you might come across a lot of players using a formation with mostly bulkers and bikers in it. The main idea behind this formation is to capitalize on the bikers' charge talent by attacking the opponent's ranged troops as much as possible while defending these bikers with the frontline bulkers. This formation can get you a lot of kills, especially when you're facing opponents that have too many bulkers in their march and not a lot of bikers. This formation is really hard to counter since the charge talent triggers on melee troops as well, so using a march of only melee troops won't work. One good method to counter this formation would be to add assault vehicles to your march for defense and riders for offense. Since the assault vehicles have the highest defense among all the ranged troops in the game, they will be able to provide decent protection to your melee riders against the bikers' charge talent. And while the assault vehicles are protecting your melee riders, your riders can use their own charge talent to do a lot of damage to the enemy troops. Also, don't forget to mix in a few low tier troops to your march as well to increase their effectiveness, as I had explained before. Another common formation in the underground tournament is a formation in which the march consists of around 33% tankers and 11% each of the remaining troop types other than carriers. This formation is a little tricky to counter since it contains a lot of different troop types, each serving a different purpose. However, you could use the same combination of bulkers, bikers, and vehicles here as well to try to maximize damage to the ranged troops. Just make sure that you add enough bulkers to your first layer so that your opponent is unable to break through your layer of bulkers. In case you do not have enough bikers and vehicles to fill your march, you could use a march similar to your opponent to see how many kills your troops are getting. If you're unable to get past the opponent's bulk earlier, you might find that your shooter losses are more than the kills that they're getting. If this is the case, then you should either reduce the number of shooters in your march or completely eliminate them from your march and replace them with other troop types to reduce losses. And don't forget to mix in lower tier troops for better results. So that's all I have for you guys in this video. If you have any other troop formation that you think are effective, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to share this video so that we can get as many troop formations as possible. If you want to know more about troop formation, head over to my blog flaviogaming.com where I've discussed this topic more in detail. I'll leave a link to it in the description and in the comments. So thanks for watching the video guys, and I will see you in the next one.